What's going on, party people? Wake and Rake Podcast, part of the Believe Network. Danny Vladdy, your host, just in time for the trade deadline. Took a little bit of a hiatus. Still going to get Pops back on to, conclude and circle back on that MLB road trip that we did on the last episode. We were ranking MLB stadiums 1 through 30. We did it before our East Coast, I say in quotation marks, because Chicago people hate me since I said that we were doing an East Coast road trip and we started out in Chicago. I get it. Chicago is not East Coast, okay? I get it. I live in California, though. The way that Californians work, anything east of the Rocky Mountains is the East Coast. So fellow Chicagoans, I don't even know if that's what we call you guys. I apologize. But it is an East Coast road trip that we did, and Chicago is the East Coast, at least in my mind. Regardless, episode 120 was all about Major League Baseball stadiums, ranking them 1 through 30. Today's episode is going to be more about the upcoming MLB trade deadline coming up in just about 6 days, depending on when you're listening to today's episode. But first, BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything online sports betting. Right now, you can receive a 50% free bet of up to $250 on your first deposit to bet on anything from the Olympics to baseball to Formula One racing. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino, get in on a game of blackjack or poker, unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use promo code BELIEVE for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. BetOnline, the game starts here. Trade deadline starts here right now. And I don't want to mess around. Normally, I start out with some fun tidbits. Normally, I start out with some wacky stories that's been happening across Major League Baseball. But here's the deal. I have one move that each Major League Baseball team should make at this year's Major League Baseball trade deadline coming up on July 31st. One move. Now, we could see teams make 2 moves, 3 moves, 4 moves. If I were to bet on it, Dodgers are probably going to make a couple. AJ Preller down in San Diego, probably going to make a couple because that's what AJ Preller does. But this, for the sake of today's argument, for the sake of today's episode, it is one move each Major League Baseball team should make at the deadline. We will go alphabetical order because that's just how I organized it. We'll start out in Arizona. Arizona Diamondbacks. The move that the Arizona Diamondbacks should make at the deadline is they should acquire Jack Flaherty, starting pitcher from the Detroit Tigers. Arizona Diamondbacks this season, their starting pitchers have a combined cumulative 4.71 earned run average. There's a relationship, too, between Arizona and Detroit trading starting pitchers. Max Scherzer is the one that comes to mind, of course. Scherzer started his career. He was an Arizona Diamondback draft pick. They, of course, shipped him over to Detroit. Jack Flaherty would help an Arizona Diamondbacks team that is in the wild card hunt. Arizona Diamondbacks, as I'm looking at it right now on Wednesday evening, 52-50. They're 1 game back of a wild card position. Right now, Braves hold that number 1 wild card position in the National League. After that, it's the Mets. After that, St. Louis Cardinals. And then you get that dotted line. Those are the teams on the outside looking in. It goes Padres, D-backs, Padres, Reds, Cubs, and then you finally get to the Giants and Nationals. So the Diamondbacks are in similar position as they were a year ago, and we all know what the Diamondbacks did once they got to the postseason last year. They got hot. They had that trio of a rotation with Gallen, Kelly, and Brandon Pfaadt. They're hoping to get those 3 guys by the time the postseason comes around this season, and then you add in Jordan Montgomery. Hopefully he can be healthy at the right time, and then you add Jack Flaherty into the mix as well. Kick one of those starters to the bullpen if need be come postseason time, and you got yourself a good little ball club. A team that's playing well, too, 7-3 in their past 10 games, Arizona Diamondbacks. Atlanta Braves, gosh, man, I don't want to say I feel bad for a team that has had so much recent success because they've been pretty spoiled down there in Atlanta for a while now. But, I mean, you lose your MVP, Ronald Acuna Jr., month 2. You lose your ace, NL Cy Young candidate, Spencer Strider, month 1. And then now we're here in July, and they just lost Ozzie Albies, their all-star second baseman. I mean, they're dropping like flies, and to no fault of their own. So I do feel for Atlanta because right now, with the way that their contracts work, we were giving Alex Anthopoulos in that front office so much credit for getting team control of these players and building himself that organization a 5 to 6 year championship window, if not longer. And the injury bug has just hit him hard. So for the Atlanta Braves at the deadline, there's some people are a little, because they've been about a 500 team since losing Acuna. And they've dropped in the standings a little bit. They're still number one in the wild card, which is why they should still try and get into the dance. But they're just 2 games up on the New York Mets, right on their tail in that wild card race. So for the very reason of, I don't know if this season is, sometimes it just doesn't go your way. And for that sake, I'm gonna kind of set up the Atlanta Braves for not just this season, but I'm gonna set them up for 2025 when hopefully they can get healthy. And that's the Atlanta Braves to acquire Chris Bassitt from the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, Chris Bassitt is not a free agent at year's end. Chris Bassitt is under team control for this season and one more season in the 2025 season. Now, here's a little caveat that I want to throw into this, or a little wrench that I want to throw into this situation too. Maybe bring Bo Bichette, or at least make the call. Alex Anthopoulos, who used to work in the Toronto Blue Jays front office, by the way, now the GM or president of baseball operation for the Atlanta Braves, so he has that relationship. Make the call to the Blue Jays, see what kind of package it would take to get Bo Bichette and Chris Bassitt. And if you can't get both, you get Chris Bassitt, controllable starter for another year, and they need starting pitching in Atlanta as well. And Orlando Arcia for the shortstop position just has not been the same player this year in 2024 as he was his all-star season a year ago. An OPS just over 670, below average hitter much of this season. So what would it take for the Atlanta Braves to acquire Chris Bassitt plus Bo Bichette? Still remains to be seen how much Toronto is looking for as a package. But Chris Bassitt would be a great fit for the Atlanta Braves, who have already seemingly acquired every single Oakland Athletic from the last playoff run that they had. Sean Murphy, they had Ramon Laureano, or I think they still do have Ramon Laureano, Matt Olson, the list goes on. And Chad Pinder at one point too. Baltimore, acquire Mason Miller. Speaking of Oakland, speaking of the Oakland Athletics, Mason Miller, yeah, the all-star for the Oakland A's, the lone all-star, although Brent Rooker, who, little foreshadowing, Brent Rooker probably should have been an all-star this year in Oakland, but he's tattooing baseballs lately. Baltimore Orioles could go a number of different ways. I landed on Mason Miller. Here's why. Mason Miller is controllable for another 2 seasons after this season. A lot of people forget this aspect too. Mason Miller was, and my understanding is that he still intends to be a starting pitcher at some point in his Major League Baseball career. The only reason that the Oakland A's kicked Mason Miller to the bullpen, where he's flourished, by the way, but the only reason they did that is because he's coming off of significant arm surgery. And so to kind of teeter back on those innings, they pushed him back into the bullpen, and he's been a wildly successful closer, an all-star closer. Now, Baltimore, of course, is without their closer, with Felix Bautista on the shelf for the entirety of this 2024 season. They do have Craig Kimbrell, who has been pitching much, much better after having a slow start. They still have Yanier Cano. So their bullpen's good. Their lineup is absolutely stacked. So for Baltimore's perspective, you're just trying to find ways to contribute or continue to build upon an already set roster. And they only have so many roster spots too, because they have all these young kids and they only have so many options down to the minor leagues. So one way around that is to kind of play with that bullpen a little bit. You bring in Mason Miller, team control. There's no idea. They don't know what they're going to do with Corbin Burns at the end of the season. I think they'd love to extend him, obviously, but it still remains to be seen how much he's going to cost in free agency at the end of this year. So if Mason Miller, hypothetically, wants to become a starting pitcher again, remains healthy, maybe Mason Miller can be a bullpen piece for them now and in team control a couple seasons after this as a potential starting pitcher. So Mason Miller to Baltimore. Boston Red Sox, really interesting position for this ball club because nobody expected them to be in this position. July coming up on the trade deadline, and they're 1.5 games back of a wild card spot. They're kind of in that flux. Like they're 7 games over 500. You would think that was enough, or that is enough to earn themselves at least a chance to contend for a playoff spot this year. And I think as a former player, Boston Red Sox GM, he would obviously love to give the Red Sox roster exactly what they've deserved. But it is a tough American League. We just mentioned the Orioles. Yankees are slipping a little bit, but the Red Sox are behind the Twins and the Royals and that wild card position. But the Red Sox have given themselves a chance to contend for a playoff spot. They haven't been good infield-wise defensively. And this one's a little quirky, but kind of a dominant theme of this episode is relationships between front offices. We've seen a number of trades between the Boston Red Sox and the Los Angeles Dodgers over the years, including Adrian Gonzalez, Carl Crawford, of course, the Mookie Betts trade. There's been a relationship there for years. American League, National League, so there's, some traction there as well. How about the Boston Red Sox go and acquire Gavin Lux from the Los Angeles Dodgers? Now, Gavin Lux is not going to fix everything here in 2024. Gavin Lux is having a rough season here in 2024, coming off of ACL surgery after tearing his ACL in spring training a year ago. They tried him out at shortstop. It didn't work defensively there. Dodgers had to put Mookie Betts at the shortstop position. He's since been at second base this year. He's batting about 230. The power numbers haven't been there for Gavin Lux. He needs some time to kind of figure it out at the big league level. And the Red Sox right now, you could argue, aren't really contending for a title right now. I mean, they'd love to sneak into the postseason, make a run at it. But I think what would be great for Gavin Lux is a guy that has a change of scenery, and maybe Boston is just that opportunity for him. So I'm thinking here, and I'm spitballing here, but the Dodgers would love to have some bullpen help and probably add a bat to the bottom of that lineup. How about a Kenley Jansen, Tyler O'Neill? Might have to throw in. Probably not. Or you might mix and match Kenley and Red Sox would like to keep Nick Pivetta. I don't want to say Pivetta, but how about a Kenley Jansen, Tyler O'Neill? Might need to throw in a prospect of some sort in there to get Gavin Lux, depending on what his trade value is. I know that sounds crazy, but Gavin Lux still has a lot of tools. Tyler O'Neill going to be a free agent at the end of the year. Kenley Jansen the same. So a couple of rentals. You got more team control for Gavin Lux. Outs above average defensively. Boston Red Sox are second worst in the American League. So again, defensively just haven't been great as a ball club. They had the most errors in the American League as a ball club as well in Boston. So Gavin Lux to Boston, change of scenery. Why not? Chicago Cubs, find a taker for Cody Bellinger. That's the move. Because Cody Bellinger, you look at his stats on the Baseball Savant page, exit velocity's down, strikeout percentages tinkering back up this year after his strikeout percentage was down a year ago. The power numbers haven't been there, just 9 home runs. So power-wise, OPS and slug-wise, not nearly what they were hoping for when they signed Bellinger in the offseason. I think right now there are a lot of teams that would love to add a power hitting, supposed left-handed hitting outfielder, first baseman to their lineup. There's a lot of teams that need hitters this year. Houston Astros really need a first baseman after getting rid of Jose Abreu. San Diego Padres, AJ Preller is going to look to be aggressive at some point. I don't know if Cody Bellinger is a perfect match there, but I can guarantee you AJ Preller is at least going to get an idea of what the Cubs are asking for. Pittsburgh Pirates are another team. That trio, Keller, Jones, Skeens, gives them a chance to win ball games. The offense put them one of the worst in the league. So maybe Pittsburgh could come out of nowhere and kind of sneak in to the Cody Bellinger sweepstakes. But for the Cubs, $27.5 million player options for the next 2 seasons. A player that is trending downward in almost every statistical category after having a bounce back year last year. I think for the Chicago Cubs, it's time already. Find a taker for Bellinger, pivot, find a new guy to kind of build your team around. Chicago White Sox, South Side, sell it all. Unfortunately for the Chicago White Sox, they missed their window. Back in 2020, 2021, they decided to bring Tony La Russa into the fold, and we all know how that worked out. They had a real strong team. They really did. I mean, they had Crochet. They had Kopech. They had Lance Lynn. They had Lucas Giolito. They had pitchers. They had a bullpen. They had Liam Hendricks. They had Aaron Bummer. Like, they had dudes. And then they had the young hitters, too. The Andrew Vaughn was coming up. Eloy Jimenez was looking like a potential all-star caliber player. Yohan Moncada, a lot of the same. Tim Anderson won a batting title. I mean, that team was good. That team was really good. And all of a sudden, just the wheels completely fell off in Chicago. Didn't even get to mention Luis Robert Jr., who's still there. So if I'm Chicago, unfortunately, they missed their window back in 2020, 2021. Now a lot of these players Dylan Cease is another guy that they shipped off to San Diego, obviously, at the beginning of this season. A lot of these guys are approaching, if not free agency, the early years of arbitration. Chicago White Sox, who unfortunately, historically, have been one of the cheapest ball clubs in recent years. They're not going to pay these guys. Luis Roberts not going to re-sign or extend with Chicago White Sox. At least that's not what's indicative of what their plans are. Sell it all. See what you can get, because right now you're not contending this year. You're not contending next year, not with that roster. So it's time to sell it all for the Chicago White Sox. So the one move I have for them, make all the moves. Cincinnati Reds, back to the National League. Kind of similar with the Chicago Cubs, similar division, and a team that's on the outside looking in. The Cincinnati Reds are 4 games back, which is interesting when you consider that they're actually their run differential, Cincinnati, plus 39. So the teams in front of them, for example, St. Louis Cardinals, same division, National League Central. They currently hold the 3rd position in that National League wildcard spot. They've been outscored this year run-wise. They're minus 36 in run differential, St. Louis Cardinals. Cincinnati Reds, they are the 4th team on the outside looking in. They've actually outscored teams plus 39 run differential. Baseball. It's the only way to explain it. Find a club for Frankie Montas. They signed Frankie Montas to a deal with player options. Strikeout percentage is down. His velocity is down. Even back before the injury, back before he was with the disappointing tenure with New York, his velocity was 95 to 96. His velocity this year has been closer to 93, 94. If you look at his average fastball, splitter still got good stuff, which is probably his best wipeout pitch. But again, the strikeout percentage is down. Great American Ballpark is a tough place to play, but his exit velocity on opponent batting average against pitches that he's throwing, they're all up as well. So you're not expecting Frankie Montas to be the Frankie Montas pre-surgery necessarily, but the numbers are up right now and not in a good way. And contract-wise, Cincinnati Reds, another team that is a low payroll team, probably not worth the $20.5 million that he's going to be owed again next season. So find a club for Frankie Montas. There's going to be plenty of teams that are going to need some sort of pitching. We'll see if a team's willing to take on the contract of Frankie Montas. Cleveland Guardians. Yeah, what a season for them. Best record in the American League, Cleveland Guardians, just as we all expected. We all believe in Stephen Vogt. Acquire Tyler Anderson and Carlos Estevez from the Los Angeles Angels. This is really quirky. So what do we know Cleveland to be notoriously? I shouldn't say notoriously, no, historically, is that Cleveland Guardians are a pitching factory. The Cal Quantrells, the Shane Biebers, the Emmanuel Clases, like they bring up guys left and right and they succeed, mostly starting pitching wise too, like Mike Clevenger, I should say notoriously here, Trevor Bauer. You know, they have a history of bringing guys through the system, developing pitchers, and developing them into successful starting pitchers. Ironically enough, the Cleveland Guardians this year had the lowest wins above replacement amongst starting pitchers this year. They have a cumulative 3.1 F/WAR. Their starting pitchers do this year, lowest in the American League. Look at their. Let me pull up their depth chart here. Cleveland's starting pitching this season: Carlos Carrasco, Tanner Bybee, Gavin Williams, Ben Lively, Xavier Curry. Now, they had Tristan McKenzie, since been shipped down to the minor leagues. They were hoping to have Shane Bieber into the fold. Obviously, Shane Bieber underwent Tommy John surgery, and he's going to be out for the season. So the Cleveland Guardians could certainly use some pitching to go along with this surprisingly good lineup that they already possess. Yeah, Tyler Anderson for the Los Angeles Angels, who was an all-star this year for the 2nd time in his career. He's going to be a free agent, not after this season, after next season. So he's controllable for one more season. And Carlos Estevez will be a free agent at year's end. The Angels absolutely will be looking to deal Estevez at the deadline because he is a true rental. So you get a starting pitcher, and the bullpen's fantastic in Cleveland. They really don't need any bullpen arms, but a team as good as they are continue to add in a very competitive American League, add Estevez to the fold as well. Colorado Rockies, just acquire some pitching prospects, please. you look at this. Colorado is very interesting, and I threw this out there on the Bluebird the other day, and was expecting to get some sort of pushback, but I think most people kind of agreed that they have some interesting players in Colorado. Amongst all the turmoil and the front office questions and just the kind of disaster that Colorado's been, really most of the franchise's existence for the most part. Ezequiel Tovar is a 22-year-old shortstop, and he's on pace to hit 30 home runs. Has one of the highest wins above replacements among National League shortstops. Brenton Doyle, he's leading National League center fielders just about every single category. We broke it down on the Wake and Rake podcast Instagram handle. Go follow us at Wake and Rake Pod. He leads in every single offensive and defensive category amongst National League center fielders. Brenton Doyle, one of the more underrated players in baseball this year. They still have Chris Bryant, former MVP. I know it's been a long time. It was 2016, four-time All-Star, but he is Chris Bryant. They still have Brendan Rodgers, who has won a Gold Glove before. I haven't even gotten to Ryan McMahon. Ryan McMahon was their lone All-Star this year for the Colorado Rockies. So they actually have some talent in Colorado. They just have no pitching whatsoever. The one pitcher they do have is Cal Quantrill, and Cal Quantrill is going to be a true rental player. Colorado Rockies obviously not going to compete this year, but they do have a little bit of, I guess, momentum with some of these young players, most notably Ezequiel Tovar. So find some pitching prospects. You have some decent players in that lineup. Find somebody that can at least give you a chance to win ball games in Colorado, because you're never going to be able to sign a free agent, pitching-wise, a pitching free agent when you play in Coors Field. That's just the way it goes. But you absolutely can find some diamonds in the rough pitching-wise. Get rid of you. Elias Diaz could be available. Cal Quantrill could be available. There's some bullpen arms that could be available as well. So find some pitching prospects, Colorado. Detroit Tigers. Hold on to Tarik Skubal. It would be a massive mistake to trade Tarik Skubal at this juncture. Detroit, only a couple games out of a wild card spot. In fact, you have a positive run differential this year. 50-53 is the Detroit Tigers record this year. I know it's not great, but it's competitive. They're in ball games. And again, it's scored 442 runs. They've given up 441. That's a positive run differential. At home this year, they have a 500 record. On the road, they're 3 games under 500. So they're a competitive bunch. And they're a team with prospects or guys that they've called up recently who are playing much, much better. Riley Green was their former top prospect. Riley Green was an all-star already this season. Their former top 10 prospect, Colt Keith, got off to a treacherous start to his career, but he's only 22 years old, and he's actually starting to get it going. Colt Keith's been one of the better second basemen in the American League since the month turned to June. Let's see. What's his numbers at now? He's about 251 now with 10 home runs, but a lot of those numbers, again, have come since the season turned to June, or at least the calendar turned to June. So you have Tarik Skubal in your rotation. You're hoping to have Casey Mize. You're hoping to develop him a little bit more. Unfortunately, you're still stuck with the contract of Javi Baez, but it would be a massive, massive mistake for the Detroit Tigers, who are a 500 ball club, to trade Tarik Skubal, a guy that just had Tommy John surgery recently. History tells us that guys that have Tommy John surgery are going to at least stay healthy for a couple seasons before the injury bug comes back into the fold. Hang on to Tarik Skubal, compete in 2025. You have some nice young pieces here that have shown promise. Riley Green, Colt Keith. The bullpen's good, or at least it was early on. Hold on to Tarik Skubal. Compete, because let me look at Tarik Skubal's contract, because he's controllable. Tarik Skubal is not going to be a free agent at year's end. And not just controllable, he's affordable. This season, Tarik Skubal is making $2.6 billion, and he's on pace to potentially win an American League Cy Young. He's entering into arbitration, and he's not going to be a free agent until the 2027 season. So if you're Detroit and you're a 500 ball club here in 2024, and you deal away Tarik Skubal, you're telling me that you don't want to be a competitive bunch with Tarik Skubal in 2025 or 2026 if you deal away Tarik Skubal. So Detroit, hold on to Tarik Skubal. I know that the packages could be decent looking. Tarik Skubal is a evidently Cy Young caliber pitcher. You need that to build around to finally become a playoff bunch in Detroit. Hold on to Tarik Skubal. Houston Astros. Houston Astros are back in first place in the American League West after the Seattle Mariners have completely, pardon my language, completely shit the bed. Houston Astros, unfortunately, still don't really have a true first baseman. Their first baseman this year have combined for a 586 OPS. That is the worst in Major League Baseball amongst first basemen. So why not go and get Evan Gattis 2.0? Acquire Isaac Paredes from the Tampa Bay Rays. Isaac Paredes, if you look at his numbers, you look at his spray charts, nearly every single one of his homers that he has ever hit at the major league level has gone to left field. He is a dead pull hitter. And a lot of the balls that Isaac Paredes hits is in the air. Has one of the highest fly ball percentages in Major League Baseball. Look at the spray chart, look at the fly ball percentage, and then you look at the Crawford boxes in Houston. Boy, that's a match made in heaven. Evan Gattis, Houston saw the same thing when Evan Gattis was in Atlanta. Evan Gattis pulled everything. His fly ball percentage was really high, and Evan Gattis went on to have an all-star couple seasons with the Houston Astros, helped them win a World Series. Isaac Paredes, very similar, right-handed hitter, power hitting hitter, and a guy that, again, with that hits everything in the air. Isaac Paredes is a perfect match made in heaven for the Houston Astros. We'll see if he can play first base. If not, maybe he's a designated hitter type guy for the Astros. Kansas City Royals all of a sudden have found themselves in the hunt, just as we all predicted. Hunt some relief pitching. Scott Alexander, Lucas Urseg, Tanner Scott, Zach Eflin are some names that come to mind. Maybe Michael Kopech up in Chicago. I know you don't see interdivision trades too often, so that could complicate things. Lucas Urseg for the A's. He's their setup guy, a former position player turned pitcher, a really good story, and he's found himself a nice niche in that Oakland A's bullpen. Scott Alexander, a left-handed bullpen arm. Kansas City, they don't really need much. I mean, you could definitely add some pieces. They're in playoff position right now. They're 56-46, and they've been playing really good baseball since the trade deadline. They don't need a ton offensively. They definitely don't need a ton starting pitching-wise. That's really what has gotten them to this position. But add to that bullpen and see what happens in a very competitive American League this season. And by the way, the Royals have the highest bullpen opponent batting average in the American League. They're giving up a 257 batting average, and they're 19th in Major League Baseball with a 4.12 earn run average. So if anything needs an upgrade, it would be the bullpen for the Royals. The Angels get a top 100 prospect. They have one in the organization right now. Caden Dana. I might even mispronounce his name, and I apologize. Caden Dana. He's the number 89th ranked prospect in baseball. Angels are probably going to deal out Luis Rengifo, Tyler Anderson, Carlos Estevez, or at least they could be available. Get a top 100 prospect. The Angels have a farm system that has been critiqued for years. Let's tweak it. Let's improve. Let's find a way to start rebuilding in Orange County. The Los Angeles Dodgers make a blockbuster with the Chicago White Sox. Put together a package for Garrett Crochet, Luis Robert Jr., Michael Kopech, and Nicky Lopez. You're the Dodgers. You have all of this money that you've backloaded. Ohtani, his $70 million deal, he's only going to see $2 million of it this year. A lot of Teoscar Hernandez's money is backloaded. A lot of Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, a lot of that money, they're not dealing out this season because they have put that money to later years. All right. Use that money flexibility and roster flexibility to go out and make this blockbuster deal, because the Dodgers, as much spending and as much trading and as much free agent signing that they've done, they're still behind the Philadelphia Phillies in the National League. Philadelphia Phillies do not have any holes. The Dodgers right now, with Max Muncy not available, there's a hole at the bottom of that lineup. When you get to the Chris Taylors of the world, when you get to the Mickey Rojas of the world, the team has, it gives you some sort of a reprieve as an opponent. The Phillies, there's no reprieve, 1 through 9. You look at their rotation, 1 through 5, there's no reprieve. You look at the bullpen. Nearly every single, it had 3 All-Stars in the Phillies bullpen this year. there is no reprieve. The Dodgers give you some sort of reprieve. And a lot of that, of course, injuries, they've been hit hard, starting pitching wise as well. Now, this is where it becomes interesting is, do the Dodgers have enough to put together this blockbuster trade for a Garrett Crochet and a Luis Robert Jr.? Is it even possible? You're going to have to put together some young pitchers, and this is where the value is questionable. How much would the Chicago White Sox value Tony Gonsolin, Dustin May, Emmett Sheehan, maybe even Walker Buehler? Yeah. All these guys are injured, but they're all young. Walker Buehler, 30 years old. Dustin May, 26 years old. Emmett Sheehan, 24 years old. These are all, a lot of them former prospects. A lot of them have team control, with the exception of Buehler. How much would the Chicago White Sox value injured, but at one point had immense value starting pitchers? I don't know what the blockbuster trade would be, but the Dodgers, be aggressive. The only World Series, obviously, we all know now in this century has been that 2020 60-game World Series. No team is hungrier to get that monkey off the back than the Los Angeles Dodgers. Keep your foot on the gas pedal. Why not? You're already this far. Keep digging. Miami Marlins, trade Tanner Scott to the Dodgers. Yeah, if the Dodgers don't end up getting Michael Kopech in that blockbuster deal, they're going to need some bullpen help. They've had some shakiness in the back. Evan Phillips has been a little shaky at times. So Tanner Scott's a perfect trade partner for the Marlins. Now, why is this important for the Marlins to trade Tanner Scott to the Dodgers? Dodgers have a great farm system. They have a history of developing pitchers. They have a history of developing young players. And one comes to mind. Remember when Yordan Alvarez was traded when he was in rookie ball to the Houston Astros for relief pitcher Josh Fields? Yeah. Yordan Alvarez was in rookie ball with the Dodgers. The Dodgers traded him for relief pitcher Josh Fields. That's how the Houston Astros got Yordan Alvarez. Maybe the Miami Marlins find lightning in a bottle. They trade Tanner Scott and they get their Yordan Alvarez. I don't know. Milwaukee Brewers acquire some sort of a mid-level starting pitcher. Two guys that come to mind: Tarik Skubal for the Chicago White Sox, who's had a phenomenal season after pitching overseas, coming back to Major League Baseball after being really a failed starter in Major League Baseball, going overseas, tinkering with his stuff. Now he's been a successful starting pitcher for the Chicago White Sox. He's going to be available. Tarik Skubal is a guy that could be available. Yusei Kikuchi for the Toronto Blue Jays is another guy that comes to mind. Milwaukee, unfortunately, we'll have to see what the MRI says with Christian Yelich's back issues, but Milwaukee's put themselves in position this year at the top of that National League Central Division to at least give themselves a chance to compete for a title. But they only have 3 starting pitchers locked into their rotation right now, at least health-wise. Colin Ray has been fantastic. Freddie Peralta has been great. They already acquired Ann Savali from the Tampa Bay Rays earlier this year. They could use some more reinforcements to that starting rotation. This is fun. Minnesota Twins trade for Randy Arozarena. Yeah, why not? Minnesota, I was looking at their roster, kind of similar to Kansas City Royals. Like, I don't find any major holes with the Twins roster. Their bullpen's really good. Their starting rotation is actually, for the most part, kind of, Pablo Lopez in particular, is almost underperformed. And yet the Minnesota Twins are in playoff position right now at 56-45. Carlos Correa, unfortunately, just went on the shelf with his plantar fasciitis, but he's hopefully going to be okay. Maybe Royce Lewis will be healthy at some point. Byron Buxton has actually stayed healthy for once. So Randy Arozarena, their outfield's been a little susceptible. Max Kepler has not been consistent. They've been kind of throwing different. Manuel Margot out in the outfield. They've been pretty inconsistent for the most part. Minnesota Twins have in the outfield. So see what it would take to get Randy Arozarena from the Tampa Bay Rays, and he's controllable for a couple more seasons as well. Minnesota Twins, recently, since the turn of the century, they haven't been able to so-called get it done in the postseason. When not a whole lot of people have more postseason experience and postseason success than Randy Arozarena, at least amongst active players. Randy Arozarena in the Minnesota Twins outfield. That would be fun. The New York Mets, I don't know what to make of this team. I had given up on them. They had a strange offseason, to say the least, with guys like Joey Wendell and Sean Manaea, Luis Severino, guys that have been injured before, Harrison Bader, a lot of players that many people had already given up on. And yet the Mets are in playoff position here approaching the trade deadline. They own the second wild card spot right now. They're 53-48. I guess you look at the roster and they could use a late inning reliever. They're going to get Cody Bellinger back in that rotation. That should help things rotation wise. But second worst earned run average after the 8th inning. You always hear how Mets fans are so tortured, right? How evidently the second worst earned run average, a 5.04 earned run average after the 8th inning. They blow a lot of leads. Edwin Diaz has been shaky to say the least. So yeah, New York Mets, your one move, get a late inning reliever. Yimi Garcia for Toronto, Andrew Chafin from Detroit. If the Texas Rangers decide to sell, which is still up in the air, we're getting there, Kirby Yates. New York Yankees, trade for Luis Rengifo or Jonathan India from Cincinnati. The Yankees, what's their issue? They hit the ball out of the yard well. They have a lot of pop, but they're very injury susceptible, and they have yet to really pour it on for a 162-game season. We've seen the Yankees before back in 2021. Nobody was going to beat this ball club. They were 35 games over 500 heading into the All-Star break. Nobody was going to take down the Yankees in 2021. All of a sudden, bullpen got hit hard by injuries. Giancarlo Stanton went down. Aaron Judge dealt with injuries. Their entire infield was dealing with injuries much of the second half of the season. And then they got bounced in the first round of the Major League Baseball playoffs. Nobody was going to beat that team. And yet, didn't even get close to really sniffing the World Series. So the Yankees, we've seen this script before, and it's a lot of the same roster, is that a lot of pop. They like to hit the ball out of the yard, but not enough guys on base consistently. Luis Rengifo has had nearly identical numbers. His first or 2 seasons prior to this, Rengifo has nearly exactly the same batting average. So 2022, it was the exact same batting average. Rengifo hit 264 in 2022. He hit 264 in 2023. And then now here in 2024, he's hitting 314, a career high. That, in my opinion, Rengifo should have been considered a little bit more seriously for an all-star spot, but just my opinion. But the Yankees need more guys on base. LeMahieu's not getting on base. Torres isn't getting on base consistently. Trent Grisham's not getting on base consistently. They need some guys to get on base in the bottom of their lineup. Luis Rengifo and Jonathan India, a guy is a career OPS up over 750 for Cincinnati. Remains to be seen if Cincinnati's willing to deal him. But Luis Rengifo, Jonathan India, some guy to get on base for the Yankees. Set up the Judges and the Sotos of the world. The Oakland A's, your one move that you should make is sell the team, John Fisher. Yeah. I have a stat that's going to just about wow everyone. The A's first 2 draft picks in last week's MLB draft, the 2024 Major League Baseball draft. The Oakland A's first 2 draft picks in the 2024 MLB draft, which took place last week, they're already the 2 highest paid hitters currently in the organization. Yeah, you thought there's teams out there, and I get it, low payroll teams, and say your owner doesn't care for you and they don't invest into a ball club. Well, this might give you a little bit of perspective. It just got drafted a week ago, and they're already the 2 highest paid hitters in the organization. Nick Kurtz, who they drafted out of Wake Forest, his signing bonus is $7 million. He was their first round draft choice, Nick Kurtz. $7 million signing bonus. The highest paid hitter currently on the Oakland A's organization is Seth Brown at $2.6 million. Doesn't end there. Tommy White, who's their second round draft choice out of LSU, he signed $3 million signing bonus. Still higher than Seth Brown, who is currently the highest paid hitter in that organization. Now, they have some pitchers like Ross Stripling, Alex Wood. They're making about $8 million this year. But hitters in the Oakland A's organization right now, Nick Kurtz is the richest with the $7 million signing bonus. Tommy White is the second richest at $3 million. Both those guys were playing college baseball a month ago. Weren't even part of the organization. Should be noted, Aldamis Diaz, he's actually going to receive the biggest paycheck from the A's this season as a hitter. But he was released in July, and he's now currently with the Houston Astros. So again, I said the 2 highest paid hitters in the Oakland A's organization currently were their 2024 MLB draft picks. It's embarrassing. Sell the team. Philadelphia Phillies acquire Blake Snell. Yeah. The Phillies have reportedly been in on some starting pitching. They want to upgrade at the back of the rotation with the Taijuan Walker situation. Now, Blake Snell is another one of those players that kind of signed the player option deal with San Francisco. San Francisco is in a hole that I think they want to dig themselves out of. They have these player option deals with Chapman and Blake Snell. They signed Jorge Soler to that contract, and that hasn't quite worked out. San Francisco's in a weird position where they need a face of the franchise, and I don't think Blake Snell is that guy. In San Francisco, 5 games back of the wild card, they just got beat up by the Dodgers. They could be looking to sell. 6 games under 500. So the Phillies, the best team in Major League Baseball. I just mentioned earlier on this episode, they have 0 holes on their roster whatsoever. But the Phillies are going to do what the Phillies are going to do. Money's not an issue at all for John Middleton, their owner. Go out and get Blake Snell. He's got player options after this. He might even opt out potentially. But Blake Snell's been pitching very, very well for San Francisco since coming off the injured list 3-4 weeks ago. Pittsburgh Pirates, please, I'm on my knees pleading that you make some sort of move to compete in 2024. The one move I had the Pittsburgh Pirates making is acquiring Brent Rooker from the Oakland A's. You do not know when you're going to get Jared Jones, Paul Skeens, and Mitch Keller healthy, all together, all at the same time, all under team control again. Right now, I understand that Jared Jones is injured right now. They're hoping to get him back later this season. But Mitch Keller has been fantastic. It was an all-star last year, all-star caliber pitcher this year. Paul Skeens just started the all-star game. Paul Skeens is, in my opinion, the most dominant pitcher in Major League Baseball right now. You have an offense that has been one of the worst in Major League Baseball. 27th in batting average. The OPS and power numbers, atrocious. Fortunately for them, O'Neal Cruz has been hitting the ball a lot better over this last month. He's the hottest hitter in our lineup. But besides Brian Reynolds, besides O'Neal Cruz, Brady Tellez might run into a ball here and there, but the lineup leaves some to be desired. So I am pleading that the Pittsburgh Pirates make some sort of move. I've been on the mountaintop shouting that they need to go out and get Vladimir Guerrero Jr. from Toronto. I don't see that happening, but that would be amazing. That would be amazing. But maybe a little bit more realistic, go and get Brent Rooker from the Oakland A's. He's also under team control for a couple seasons after this, having a phenomenal year, 20-plus pops, 280-plus batting average, and OPS well over 900. He's been one of the most underrated hitters in baseball this season. Pittsburgh Pirates got to add some offense because you don't know when you're going to get those 3 starters, Keller, Jones, Skeens, healthy all at the same time as you have right now. San Diego Padres, please just hold on to Ethan Salas because we know that AJ Preller is going to AJ Preller. AJ Preller, one of, if not the most aggressive general manager in baseball. Juan Soto deal, hindsight bias, but we know now that James Wood, Mackenzie Gore, CJ Abrams, at least now it's not looking great. Again, it's hindsight bias, but hold on to Ethan Salas. He's a top 10 prospect. I think he's number 8 in baseball at just 18 years old. They signed him when he was 16 years old. He was playing spring training this year at 17 years old. And he's putting together some good numbers at the AA level this season for the minor leagues in San Diego. So please just hold on to Ethan Salas. I know AJ Preller is going to want to make some sort of move, but he's already made the deal for Dylan Cease. He's already made the deal for Luis Ariz. Just hold on to Ethan Salas, AJ Preller. Please just whatever you do, man, just hold on to the kid because you've already shipped out your entire farm system a couple times before. Just hold on to Ethan Salas. I do want to get this off my chest while I'm talking about the Padres too, though, because again, it's hindsight bias and everybody critiques the San Diego Padres for shipping out their entire farm system for Juan Soto. But Juan Soto with the Yankees this year, they played in San Diego and Padre fans booed him. And I think it's just absolutely ridiculous. Like, let's look at the Juan Soto trade. Okay. This is what the Nationals got back for Juan Soto. Mackenzie Gore, CJ Abrams, James Wood, Robert Hassel, and Harlan Susana. Juan Soto, which is what the San Diego Padres got in return for that package. A lot of people think Juan Soto was a disappointment. No, actually, he wasn't. Juan Soto helped the Padres reach the National League Championship Series for the third time in franchise history. A historically losing franchise, he helped the Padres reach the National League Championship Series only to fall short to a very strong Philadelphia Phillies team. Petco Park sold out nearly every single game Juan Soto put on the Padre pinstripes, Padre uniform. Soto was an all-star, Silver Slugger, and finished 6th in MVP voting in his only full season with San Diego. 6th in MVP voting. Yeah, it was a haul. Mackenzie Gore, Abrams, Wood, Hassel, Susana. It's a haul, but it was absolutely a risk worth taking. And the Padres got in return for Soto with New York. They've gotten 2 starting pitchers, Michael King. They at least got something in return for Soto. It's not as if they let him walk in free agency and this entire trade package was lost. Just had to get that off my chest. Everybody critiques the Padres. I get hindsight is 2020. And I get that Mackenzie Gore is a stud. I get that C.J. Abrams is a stud. I get James Wood is a stud. Still remains to be seen with Hassel and Susan. I get that they're studs. But Juan Soto finished 6th in MVP voting, Silver Slugger, All-Star. And people are saying he was a disappointment in San Diego. It's ridiculous. San Diego Padre fans, stop booing the guy. Be better. San Francisco Giants. Trade for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. if and only if he entertains an extension. Indications is that the Blue Jays have at least tried talking extensions with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. before. And it at least seems on the outside looking in that Vlad wants to hit free agency at the end of next season. So, San Francisco Giants need a face of the franchise. Tired of seeing Wilmer Flores and I don't even know who else in the 3-hole. They need a face of the franchise. I love Logan Webb. I love their starting pitching that they have. Blake Snell, Robbie Ray is going to come back. Pitching wise, San Francisco is in good position, but they need somebody to get fans out to the ballpark. The energy just isn't the same without Sandovals and Linscombs and Canes and Crawfords, Brennan Belts. They need a face of the franchise. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is a face of the franchise. Don't know if Toronto's going to want to give him up. But San Francisco, don't give up everything if he's not going to sign an extension. No, you need some sort of assurance that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is going to stick around for a while. But San Francisco need to face the franchise. Vlad's that guy. Seattle. I don't want to overreact. I don't want to act like the sky is falling. But you were in first place for the entire season. Now Houston is in first place. And you cannot hit the baseball to save your life. One of the worst batting averages in Major League Baseball, the worst batting average in Major League Baseball, the Seattle Mariners offense owns. One of the highest strikeout percentages in recent times since the turn of the century into the 2000s. They cannot make contact with the ball. And I put the blame on the players. That's fine. Mariners have underperformed this year, including Julio Rodriguez. But at the same time, that Seattle Mariners front office has completely failed this roster. When you have a starting rotation that the Mariners possess under team control, 5 of them, 5 starting pitchers that are dominant, all all-star potential starting pitchers, and you put together an offense, with the exception of Julio Rodriguez, you put together an offense that includes, we'll go out and get Jorge Polanco. Yeah, we'll go out and get Josh Rojas, Luke Raley. We'll get Mitch Haniger back into the fold. We'll get Mitch Garver. B-level players. I'm not saying these players are poor. I'm saying these are B-level players. And you have a rotation of Logan Gilbert, all-star this year. Luis Castillo, perennial all-star. George Kirby, going to be an all-star. Bryce Miller, Brian Wu. These guys are all under team control for another 3 years. Seattle has had an invitation to come sit at the big boys table, and they have declined it each and every year. They could be competing with the Dodgers. They could be competing with the Yankees. They could be competing with these big payroll clubs who have so much promise with their young roster. And the Seattle Mariners have declined that invitation and said, nope, we're good sitting at the kiddie table. We're good having a middle-of-the-road payroll. We're good with being a middle-of-the-road ball club. You signed Julio Rodriguez to the extension, and you've done nothing since that front office. It'd be one thing, I even give San Francisco credit. At least San Francisco was in on Aaron Judge. They were in, allegedly, on Bryce Harper. They were in, allegedly, on the Garrett Coles and the Carlos Correas. They were at least aggressive in free agency. Seattle, they came out and said, we can't get Ohtani, so we're out. They aren't even in on these guys. And this is a team that broke their playoff drought of 20 years a couple seasons ago. Last year, they traded away their closer and Paul Sewald when they were just 2 games back of a wild card spot. That front office has got to do better for this roster, for this starting rotation, because this starting rotation is good enough to not just win a playoff series. This starting rotation and bullpen is good enough to win a World Series. And they've rewarded this team with, no offense, they've rewarded this team with Jorge Polanco, Josh Rojas, Luke Raley, Mitch Garver. Well, Seattle Mariners, you made your own bed. Here's your seat at the kiddie table. I say all that to say, please go out and make some sort of pitch and trade offer for Luis Robert Jr. I already mentioned the Dodgers should do the same. Mariners and Dodgers have both been floated as potential landing spots for Luis Robert Jr. Okay, Seattle, you don't want to pay guys in free agency? Go trade for one. You don't want to pay a superstar in free agency? Go trade for one. And if you want to let him walk in free agency in a couple of years, so be it, because you don't want to pay the money. That's fine. But go out and get Julio Rodriguez and this starting rotation, something to build on. Luis Robert Jr. St. Louis Cardinals. Go get Tommy Pham back. Tommy Pham brings toughness, and he's obviously a polarizing figure. But what St. Louis really struggles with this season is hitting against left-handed pitching. They have the worst batting average against left-handed pitching this season. 224 Cardinals are hitting against southpaws. Tommy Pham, on the other hand, has been a fantastic hitter his entire career, hitting against left-handed pitching. This season, Tommy Pham, 848 OPS, a 377 on-base percentage against lefties. In his career, he's got an 834 OPS against lefties. Tommy Pham has a history, too, of playing as a more platoon option. So if the St. Louis Cardinals already have Siani that they like in center field defensively, they have Newt Barr and Donovan, who they kind of play around with, too, as kind of a utility guy. They still have Carlson. So if you want to just use Tommy Pham as a platoon option, you certainly can do that. But Tommy Pham would certainly help against left-handed pitching. Tampa Bay Rays promote Junior Caminero. Junior Caminero, top 10 prospect in Major League Baseball, number 1 prospect in the Tampa Bay Rays organization. He started out the season injured, and so we got off to a little bit of a scuttled start, if you will, as expected when you're coming off of a significant injury such as Caminero was. But in AAA this year, Caminero, 37 games. He's hitting 253, 795 OPS, 9 home runs in 37 games. He had a little bit of experience at the big league level last year. Caminero did 7 games, had 1 pop, 7 ribs, 235 batting average, but still just 21 years old. He just turned 21 a month ago. So still very, very young, but the Rays right now, probably not looking to contend in 2024. So bring up Junior Caminero. That's your one move that you should make. Texas Rangers, very, very intriguing. Won 11 of their past 16 games, and yet they're still on the outside looking in, playoff-wise. Let's look at the American League standings. Texas Rangers are now currently 6 games back of a wild card position. They're 50-52, playing better baseball, and they have a +8 run differential. And they're the defending champs, and we've seen across history, defending champs are stubborn. They want to try and defend that title, and as they should. Texas Rangers seemingly have wanted to tread water most of the season in the hopes that they were going to get back the starting pitching that was going to start the season on the injured list, including Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer, possibly Tommy Mahle. Well, they got back Max Scherzer. They're hoping to get deGrom back after the deadline at some point. And they're also hoping to get back Evan Carter, who hoping to be a Rookie of the Year candidate. Hasn't turned out that way, but they're hoping to get Evan Carter back very, very soon. And possibly Tyler Mahle as well. Dane Dunning as well. 2 games under 500. Stand on 16. Little blackjack lingo for you. Texas Rangers, your one move that you should make is you should stand pat. Don't do anything. You got big bonuses with that World Series victory. Big bonuses. So you're not worried about money. You're not worried about payroll right now. You're not worried about building the farm system. You still have a good roster. You still have Corey Seager and Simeon and all these guys locked up. They're very much in position to compete next year, regardless of what they do this year. So see what your roster can do. Get these guys back into the fold, DeGrom, Scherzer, and get healthy, and see if you can make a run at it and defend your title. And if you miss the postseason, so be it. You don't have too many guys that, could potentially be rental players and get massive prospects for them in return. Just stand on 16, Texas, and see what happens. So don't do anything. That's my point. Toronto Blue Jays, hold on to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is still 26 years old. 25 years old, excuse me. He's going to turn 26 next year. He's a face of the franchise. I understand that his power numbers have dipped since 2021 when he hit 48 home runs, 111 RBIs, finished second MVP voting. His home run numbers went down from 48 to 32 the next season, 26 the next, and now he's got 17 this season. He's on pace to hit around the same this year. But he's still got an 840 OPS this year. He just made the All-Star team for the 4th straight season. He's stellar defensively at first base, which he doesn't get nearly enough credit for. Out above average, defensive runs saved, he ranks amongst the best in the big leagues as a first baseman. 293 batting average, and he is intimidating in the box, which is exactly why I want San Francisco to try and hunt for his services. But the same reason I want San Francisco to go get Vlad is the same reason why I want Toronto to keep Vlad. He is a face of the franchise. If you give up Bo Bichette and some of these starting pitchers, like Toronto might do, because they're not in position to compete and they're looking to rebuild that system and kind of come up on this next juncture as an organization, build around Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Extend him, keep him, extend him into the offseason, hold on to him as long as you possibly can. He's 25 years old. He's already hit 150 home runs, people. I think it's even fair to say that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. somehow is underrated. And finally, the Washington Nationals find a way to package Patrick Corbin with one of the relievers that you have potentially available at the deadline. Washington has been probably exceeded expectations this year, and they have some young players that people are liking. C.J. Abrams, James Woods, pitching-wise, Mackenzie Gore. But Patrick Corbin's contract is just completely handcuffed both Corbin and, unfortunately, the injuries to Steven Strasburg and his contract. The Corbin contract, the Strasburg contract completely handcuffed this team. Fortunately for them, they really haven't been really truly trying to compete under this rebuild since winning the World Series in 2019. But it would be nice to kind of get rid of that Patrick Corbin contract if you can find a suitor. The Nationals are going to have to eat some of it, if not most of it. But he's not providing you anything. You're not trying to compete this year. Just find a way to, if it's Kyle Finnegan, if it's Derek Law, one of these relief pitchers that probably could be dealt at the deadline, see if you can eat away at that contract, or at least maybe the Los Angeles Dodgers will eat up $1 million of the contract. Maybe it'll save you a couple bucks. Find a way to package Patrick Corbin with a reliever. There we go. One move each Major League Baseball team should make at the deadline. A little long-winded, but hopefully fans of all 30 teams at least got some source of intrigue with what I think they should do at the deadline. It's going to be a lot of moves. It's going to be a lot of action with the expanded postseason. It's not new this year, but what it's done over the past couple of seasons since they implemented it, so many teams in contention. Look at the National League. You had 13 out of 15 teams are either in playoff position or within 6 games of a playoff spot. Teams are in it. There's going to be a lot of teams vouching for a playoff spot. Are the Rangers into it at 2 games under? Are the Rays in the wild card race at 500. Remains to be seen what's going to happen, but I think it's going to be an electric trade deadline. This is just what I think these teams should do. Appreciate you guys tuning in and sitting with me during that long-winded trade deadline episode. I'll be back with you episode 122 on the next one. Wake and Rake Podcast. Follow us all at Wake and Rake Pod. Please hit that download, subscribe on the YouTube pages. Follow us, listen to us, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Appreciate you guys listening. Talk soon, people. Peace.